Hello there, and welcome to Docking Bay 327. Today, we finally finished part 3 of my epic terrarium room build, including some glass covers, some awesome control panels that turn on and off the life support system of each creature, as well as some amazing decals provided by Ado Morin from Fabworks. And then, of course, I will walk you through the process of how I built it, weathered it, wired it all together. Then I'll show you some shots of it in all its epic glory in my main area above the bookshelves in my office here. I also have some links to some of the products and pieces that I used throughout the build down in the description below. Those are affiliated links, so if you purchase from those, it actually helps support the channel. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. As with most of my builds, I started in Adobe Illustrator to sketch out the idea and get my dimensions figured out. For the sides of each plexi frame, I used 1/4" MDF. The design is based on some of the blast door designs in the Star Wars universe. I would like to point out that you could just as easily use a bandsaw to cut out the angles, but there is a distinct difference in skill sets. What I mean is, with the jigsaw, you control the blade's motion, whereas with the bandsaw, you control the motion of the piece you are cutting out. It may seem the same to most people, but it is definitely something I have noticed and still prefer to use the jigsaw. They don't call me the Jigsaw Jedi for nothing. Now we'll start building the control panels that will go beneath each plexi frame. This wood glue works really well with MDF. Because the sides are only 1/4" thick, I used this scrap piece that was wide enough to apply equal pressure to both sides when clamped down. I picked out the different buttons and switches I thought looked good together and did a test layout to ensure the spacing worked. From there, I marked out the center of the panel and the cross section for each one to ensure they all lined up once the holes were drilled. I used a combination of Forstner bits and a standard bit for the individual LEDs. Now, back to assembling the plexi frames. So as I was building this, I'm building it in pieces, modular like everything else in my office, and I thought I could use these awesome rare earth magnets to connect the plexiglass frame to the top of the bookshelf. That way it could easily remove them take them down if I needed to, and that didn't work so well. The frames that I made are a little too heavy, so unfortunately one of them actually fell down and cracked part of the plexiglass and broke part of the frame. It's not detrimental to the project. I'll figure out a good way to hide it. Thankfully it's just on one edge, and thankfully it didn't crack the whole thing. But yeah, I just decided to go back to using pocket screws to install it into the book casing in a nice secure way. And if I ever need to take it apart, I still can. It'll just require a drill. Next, we begin building the panel for the far right side. This will hide the plugs and provide ventilation and airflow. I pulled the fans from old computers and will show you how I wired them up a bit later. I marked out the design in pencil and began masking the different stages of the multicolored layout. Going back to the control panels, I installed all the buttons, switches, and LEDs and painstakingly wired them all to the main switch on the left. Links to all these in the description below. Nothing says Star Wars like pinstriping. I printed these decals out for additional interest. Shout out to Ado for creating the creature graphics and making them available to everyone on the Facebook Room Builders group. As I mentioned, wiring the fans is pretty straightforward. Most PC fans have 3 wires, but we only need the red and black for it to function. You can cut the blue wires back since they won't be needed for our purposes here. Adding all the LEDs is one of the more tedious parts of this build. Basically, I place them all in the pre-drilled holes and strip all the wire ends. From there, I simply connect all the positive wires together and then do the same for the negative wires. I usually do all my electronics work at this table because it's more comfortable and I can play some Star Wars shows on the TV to listen to as I work. So last year, I got a chance to check out one of the local bourbon distilleries and get a tour of how they make their bourbon and whiskey. Super cool, a lot of fun. As I was up in one of the areas where they were making the actual, the fermenting process, I noticed in the window, it had this funky, greasy kind of residue on the windows. So I took a few shots of it. You can see those here. Now I'm using those as reference photos for the front glass covers of my terrarium. I'm always looking for inspiration in life. So always keep an eye out for good reference photos. You never know where you're going to find those. Using these water mixable oil paints really works great for that greasy residue. Mixing it with some paint thinner gave it just the right consistency for me to work with. After I applied the residue and removed most of the paint with a shop towel, it was a little too subtle for my taste. So I decided to give it some prominent drips to really sell the look that these creatures have been living in this habitat for a very long time. And here is the final result in all its epic glory. So there you go. My awesome terrarium is built. Now, if you notice, there's actually a couple of gaps in between the two creatures and then the last panel over on the side with the fans. That's on purpose. You'll see why I built it that way in another build video coming soon. In the meantime, just want to thank everyone for your likes, your subscribes. Give a huge shout out to my Patreon members. You guys are awesome. And until next time, build with what you know and figure out the rest.